You're listening to Weekdays on BYU-Idaho Radio. I'm Nathan Lenahan, and I'm here in the studio today with Jason and Debbie Johnson, founders and CEO of Quack Car Wash and speakers at the Presidential Forum. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Thanks
Nathan.
for having us.
Yeah, grateful to be here.
So before we get into just your business information and what you're going to talk about at the Presidential Forum, could you just give us some background information on yourselves?
Yeah, Debbie, you want to start or you want
Sure.
me to?
I actually attended Rick's College back in the day, so I love this place. And then I went to BYU Provo and majored in graphic design and served a mission. I was in the Utah Provo mission. Got my call while I was at BYU. That was fun. And was also in the St. George Visitor Center. Then returned and taught at the MTC for a couple years, graduated, and helped put Jason through school.
And now a mom of 5
Yes,
kids.
now I am a mom of 5 kids and 2 grandbabies.
Wow.
So
And when she sees the grandbabies on the phone, she ignores her daughters and just talks to the grandbabies.
I mean, yeah, that's about how it works with grandparents.
Yeah, for me, I went to school at BYU. I'd played a couple years of junior college basketball before that, served a mission in Argentina, majored in economics, and I went to work after our MBA, actually. We spent some time, different jobs before that, and then I was an analyst at Hewlett-Packard, and I had this crazy idea for a car wash business that I just couldn't stop thinking about, so we had a really young family, and I was 30 years old, and we decided to go the route of an entrepreneur and start a crazy car wash business in California. That was 2004.
And so what was your inspiration for starting the car wash business?
Yeah, I actually had a class at BYU. It was a real estate finance class, and Professor Nadal was my teacher, and we had to build a business model for the class, and I chose car wash. It was actually supposed to be just real estate, but I convinced him to let me do a operating business and a real estate model. And so I had this business plan that I'd built, and when I was working at HP, I just kept thinking about it and thought, this is an industry with no brand and no scale. Every car wash was named Car Wash, and the biggest chain in the country was like 35 locations. And so I just thought there's a space here to disrupt, and also a technology with the idea of a conveyor that we thought could really make a difference. But then I just went to work for somebody else and finally couldn't stop thinking about it, and networked into some people with money, and because I didn't have any, and they wrote the first checks. That was our business partners, Tim and Chris and Greg.
Wow. And so, of course, starting out with one location, how many locations does Quack Car Wash have now?
Yeah, we're just over 330, and we're opening about 2 a week now. So
Wow.
It's been a lot of slow growth at the beginning and growing faster now.
And how many states does it go across? How many states is it in?
Yeah, last year we were in 7, and then we opened up 4 new states, so in 11 states now.
Wow.
And not in Idaho.
Not in Idaho yet.
That's right, not yet.
And so early on, what were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced?
Oh, man, everything. We just didn't do well. It didn't go well. We had one car wash, and we weren't washing very many cars, and we couldn't figure out the chemistry or the equipment or the marketing or the people stuff, the culture. Our first contractor, when we built the first car wash, went bankrupt, and we had to pay twice for a lot of the building. It was just one mistake after another. And then it actually got worse as we got to 3 locations and then 5. Still weren't washing a lot of cars. We probably grew too fast, too soon. And then we had, over 1 week, we had a break-in at one of the car washes. They stole the safe. They ripped it out of the ground, destroyed the building as they kind of pulled it through the front door. And then 4 days later, we had a call from the alarm company, and the building was on fire, and it burned to the ground. That was our headquarters, actually. That's where my office was. And then a couple days later, another car wash got broken into. So 3 of the 5 weren't working, and not working for a long time. And we already weren't doing well.
it was a dark time.
It was hard.
It was really hard.
But we were grateful for some feelings of peace that came when we prayed, and a couple of moments where heaven provided some comfort, even maybe without instructions on how to fix everything. And great business partners, Tim and Chris and Greg and my partner Travis, who helped us through all of that. But it took years. Our first 7 years were kind of high adventure and low returns, and it was a struggle. And Debbie was home with the kids, and it was
You
high
had to get
adventure for all
scrappy.
of us. Talk about scrappy.
Yeah, no, I really, a couple things with that experience that week. It was really interesting because our son also was, our oldest, got baptized that week. And it was like this week that everything was happening, from super low to an experience where all of a sudden heaven had its presence there, and we just really felt God's hand, and I'm super grateful for that. But I know it's been amazing kind of to watch Jason and the resilience that's been there, and his will to not give up, but also to really include God in it. I've learned from him that it's okay to pray and ask, will you touch these stones? Like, I've got this business plan. I'm not sure how it's going to work. I don't know mechanics. I don't know all of these things, but you do, and you know who the people are that do. And that's one of the most fascinating things, is to see how you can get the right people on the bus in the right seats. And he's had to move some around, but as he's done that, with God's help, it's been amazing.
Yeah, well said.
And so, God's hand in your life, that's what you guys touch on the forum in your talks, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems like you felt that a lot as you've been running and growing this business, going throughout life, right?
Yeah, there's these moments where you pray, and Debbie described it, just pray and ask for help and ask him to make things better. And in our experiences, that's not always what happens. Sometimes you're delivered from your problems, and sometimes you're just comforted. Sometimes the instructions don't come on what to do next. But there was a moment where we had a transaction where we were buying some other car washes, which was crazy because things weren't going great, but these were the ones that we were buying were doing well. And what was fascinating was they were one of the first ones in the country they were in Texas, to ever do a membership where you could buy a car wash on a membership. And at first, that seemed like the craziest idea, that somebody could wash as many times as they wanted. We thought there's no way that would work financially, but we dug into the black box and kind of looked at the data, and it was remarkable, if you priced it right, that it made sense. And so after we did the transaction and we started running the membership program at all of our sites, it really helped. And this was during the great financial crisis. This was 2008, 2009. So we didn't understand the headwinds of how hard things were, why it was so hard. But I remember sitting in my business partner's car, Tim, after the transaction was complete. And we were just talking about how amazing it was, all that we learned, how things were working now. This membership model really changed things for us. And I remember as I was sitting there talking to him, having this impression where heaven said, I answered your question. And I just remember thinking, oh, you totally did. As I had just begged and begged and begged for years for how to fix the business. And often, the answers to our prayers come wrapped up in problems. And this one was the problem of this transaction and the math of this membership model. But as we did it, it was definitely the answer to the question.
Yeah. And is there anything that you guys would like to expand about that you spoke about on the forum that you just maybe had to cut for time, didn't have time, that you wish you could have spoke more on?
Yeah, I think some of the practical things, we have a daughter who graduated from BYU-Idaho and loves this place and was involved in so many ways on campus. And of course, we asked her thoughts on what we should talk about. And she said, Mom, Dad, like, everybody talks about the gospel and they talk about the spiritual parts of things, but what about the practical things? Like, how do we find a job? How do we pick a career? How do we know that path? And I think it's such a great question. And I think one of the things I learned a long time ago is you never know for sure. And heaven's not always going to tell you everything you should do. So sometimes you have to pretend. You just have to pick something that's kind of good, that you think you mostly like, and then you just pretend that that's the best thing in the world and you move forward. And if you get an impression to stop, you can always change course. But just pick something and go and move forward full speed, all in, as if it was the best thing in the world. No job is perfect. There just aren't any perfect jobs. All jobs have stuff that's lame and boring and difficult. Every career is going to be that way, but you just pick something and move forward. You ask for heaven's help for sure, and it'll come. But sometimes you just have to pretend that this is the most amazing thing you could ever do.
And what's the one takeaway that you hope that students and people get from your forum?
I would say don't forget to include him. Like, that is so critical. No matter what we're doing in our lives, sometimes we think, oh, I've got to do it all. But he is so willing and ready. I think that's part of our covenants, is we're including him, whether it's in our marriage, whether it's in our career, whether it's in our family, whether it's in a trial, whether it's in the greatest experience ever. Include him, and everything will be so much more than it could be if we don't. And I it was actually a couple days ago, we were in the temple in Provo, and we had just been talking with our son, who's a returned missionary. All of his roommates are returned missionaries. And he had gotten home from church, and he said, I was the only one that went to church today from my apartment. And as we're sitting in the temple, we're thinking back on that, and we're seeing almost everyone in there. Like, we're the oldest people in the temple at that point. And we couldn't believe how packed it was with young people. And it was just such an amazing feeling. I just had so much hope for the future, just seeing all of these people. And Jason turns to me and he said, there are those who won't even go to church, and then there are these who are here in the temple. And I think it's not so much about not being in the temple or not being at church. I think it's more about missing out on what their lives could be as they include God. It's so much more. And that's what I would say is the takeaway.
Thank you guys so much for being here and for coming in and sharing this with us.
Yeah, super grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.